And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another victorious episode of the Assembly Call, as tonight your Indiana Hoosiers defeat Hope College 98-65 in sparkling new Simon Skjodt Assembly Hall. This was a game that the Hoosiers actually came out pretty sluggish in the first half. Hope jumped out to a little lead, but Indiana really used defense to lead to offense, and then really did the same thing in the second half, where they came out a little bit sluggish. Then the defense picked up, used the defense to turn into offense, and were able to go on big runs and eventually put Hope College away. And we are going to break it all down for you on this episode of the Assembly Call. I am your host, Jared Morris. Very excited to be with you. I will be joined tonight by Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips. Will DeWitt is at Assembly Hall. Make sure you go and like us over on Facebook, because he will be doing a live report from Simon Skjodt Assembly Hall after the post-game press conference. So like us over there and get Will's report. All right, well, let's begin tonight's show as we always begin our show with our banner moment, the Hoosier Proud banner moment this season. And for me, really the banner moment came at the first dead ball, and then the next dead ball after that, and the next dead ball after that, when Indiana just continuously was substituting tonight, just over and over again. Andy, you're going to have a lot of fun doing the lineups for this one because there were a lot of lineups, a lot of substitutions. But what was really encouraging was the lack of drop-off, and in fact, the spark that Indiana continuously got from the guys coming in. And I really thought that for most of the night, Indiana played its best when one of the freshmen was on the floor, and we'll get into talking about these guys, Devontae Green, Curtis Jones, and Geron Davis, all brought something really good to the table. But I think what it suggested for Indiana, and of course, an uneven exhibition game, that's what you expect in a game like this, but you saw flashes of the depth and the explosiveness. And I think that was really encouraging to see for Indiana fans. And obviously this is a team that could be even more deep if Colin Hartman weren't hurt. But even with the guys that Indiana has, I thought you really saw the potential for a really deep, explosive team. And that's what you're looking for in these exhibition games. You're not going to see a lot of crisp execution and perfect conditioning. And we certainly didn't see that from Indiana tonight. But I thought you really saw some good things from the guys that came in. And a deep bench, and we'll get into talking about all of those guys as we go through tonight's show. And of course, as I said, tonight's banner moment is brought to you by our friends at Hoosier Proud, an Indiana-based brand by Hoosiers for Hoosiers. To see their complete line of apparel, including T-shirts, sweatshirts, stickers, and more, all featuring unique Indiana-themed designs, visit HoosierProud.com. And when you do, use the promo code ASSEMBLY, ASSEMBLY, to receive 15% off at checkout. Connor and the guys at Hoosier Proud designed and they distribute now our official Assembly Call logo T-shirt. And when you purchase our T-shirt at Hoosier Proud, a portion of the proceeds does go back to us to help support the show. So we appreciate you doing that. To see our T-shirts and so much more, including the IU football-themed Kick Was Good T-shirt that went viral earlier this year and that I know Andy purchased, visit HoosierProud.com. And again, use the promo code ASSEMBLY to receive 15% off your entire order. That's HoosierProud.com, and we thank them for sponsoring the banner moment. All right, well, let's move the ball, get through some opening thoughts here with the rest of our team. Andy, we will go over to you with tonight's bottoms line brought to us by bracketology.fm.
Well, the big thing for me tonight was how Thomas Bryant came out in the second half. After a first half where he didn't really touch the ball very much, I know I lamented a bit how many threes IU took in that first half, and in a game like this against an opponent whose center I think was 6'6", you really wanted to see Bryant get involved, and we didn't see that a lot in the first half, but we most certainly did to start the second half. The offense was really running through Bryant, whether that was at times through him in the high post, at times it was him trying to take people off the dribble. He made a couple nice dishes out to guys for three-pointers early in the half, but also really got himself involved, had his that kind of Troy Williams-esque driving layup, as you mentioned, a shoulder shimmy to the band. Kind of saw it all from Bryant in the second half. He ended up with 11 points after the break, a pair of rebounds, those two assists that I mentioned, and I thought really asserted himself and was the all Big Ten and potential Big Ten MVP type player that we were all expecting. So I think a little bit of a slow start, maybe deferring to other guys there, given some of the comments earlier in the week from Crean, and you kind of talked about the season he compared that to. I saw flashbacks of that a little bit with the why can't they get the ball inside of this guy early on? So I thought it was good they really rectified that in the second half in a big way, And I think that's something that we'll continue to look for, particularly in the next exhibition game, because he's going to play a huge role against Kansas, obviously, in an area where IU looks to have probably its biggest advantage just from an interior standpoint. So something to look at with him, but a good showing from the big fella to start the season.
Did you think part of the reason Indiana struggled to get him the ball in the first half was Hope playing that 2-3 zone and just packing it in and just, really making it difficult for Indiana to get the ball in there?
I think they did that to a certain extent, but I also thought IU settled for some threes that really, weren't necessary. Shots that against an opponent like this you could kind of get anytime. So a little bit of both. Definitely give a little bit of credit to Hope, but I think they could have, schemed him open a little bit better, and they seemed to do a better job of that in the second half, even letting him get the ball out front a little bit on his own instead of having to rely on posting him up as much.
All right, well, let's go with Ryan's rant, brought to us by the Big Lead. What are your opening thoughts tonight, Ryan?
Yeah, I just was impressed with the depth for Indiana. I think that with any scrimmage, it's going to be ragged, and it's a preseason exhibition game, and there were times where this game was really ragged and did not it wasn't encouraging, we'll say that at times, but then at times, they look good. And so I think it was, hit or miss. But one thing I thought that was impressive was the depth. You had guys like Devontae Green. He was the leading scorer with 17 points in only 13 minutes, and he just continues to impress. And then, guys off the bench. Robert Johnson was coming off the bench in this one. I'm not sure if that's going to be the situation when the season starts or not, but he was who he was. There's a reason that Andy is the president of his fan club, and he showed stretches where he was really good. I thought he looked rusty with his jump shot, but again, just all over the floor. Curtis Jones, Geron Davis, Josh Newkirk, all these guys came in and provided something. JaJuan Morgan, of course. They all came in and provided something, and that's the key when you have this kind of depth is, are you getting something from these guys? And they all gave something. The one thing I really liked about the second unit or the sort of the second wave of guys is they all played really intense defense. They all seemed very committed to playing defense, which is a big deal because, half the battle with defense is getting guys to even just pay attention to it or focus on it. And so there was a lot of good effort there. Devontae Green seemed to lead that charge. I was encouraged by the depth. The young guys all look like they belong. It's going to take time to get them up to a Big Ten level, but they all look like they belong in this game and look like they belong on this team and could carve out roles for themselves. Absolutely.
And it's important to view games like this, exhibition games like this, in the proper context. And I'll tell you what I mean here in just a second. But first, I want to take a quick minute, tell you about our other sponsor, SeatGeek, who we're so excited to have back for a second season here on the Assembly Call. Buying tickets online for sports and concerts, as you know, can be a confusing process, has been for a long time. It can be hard to find the best deal for that game or show you want to go to, and a lot of those older ticket sites don't seem to want to change that. But SeatGeek is different. They've come along and created an amazing app and website that makes it easier than ever for fans to buy and sell tickets, which is why all of us on the show use SeatGeek, give it our endorsement. It's the first place I go to look for tickets to a game or concert, in part because they do all the price comparison for you by searching multiple ticket sites and ensuring that you get the best possible deal. They do the work, you save the money. And speaking of saving money, Assembly Call listeners actually have an opportunity to get a $20 rebate off your first SeatGeek purchase. And here's how that works. Download the SeatGeek app. You can also go to the website, but their app is really handy. Go to the settings tab and click add a promo code and enter the promo code ASSEMBLY, ASSEMBLY, and SeatGeek will send you a $20 rebate after you've made that first ticket purchase. So again, download the SeatGeek app, enter the promo code ASSEMBLY, ASSEMBLY today. All right, well, you are listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Jared Morris here with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips breaking down Indiana's victory tonight over Hope College. So let me explain what I mean there by viewing this game in context. I thought Tom Crean had some interesting comments on his coach's show last night, Monday night, had some interesting comments with Fish before the game tonight. Basically saying it felt to me, and I want to get your guys' thoughts, felt to me a little bit like calling out his guards, Robert Johnson and Josh Newkirk a bit, talking about how he really wanted more communication, wanted more leadership from that position. And then you see the starting lineup, and JaJuan Morgan is out there starting at point guard. And that's something we've kind of joked about but it is no joking matter as he's out there starting at point guard and not looking terribly out of place. I thought JaJuan actually used the baseline pretty well a couple times, finding guys a la Yogi Ferrell from the last few years, and did some nice things. But obviously this team is going to go as far as Robert Johnson and Josh Newkirk can take them in terms of replacing the ball handling and leadership that you lost with Yogi Ferrell. And so I thought, that was interesting. I thought Tom Crean's comments also about the fact that they haven't worked very much on defensive rebounding yet. Just not something that they've really put in, that they were going to kind of watch this game, see how they do, and then work more on the fundamentals of rebounding. And he did also mention wanting to see Indiana cut down on the turnovers. Said, if we're not going to be as efficient offensively as we were last year, we can't be turning the ball over so much. And that, to me, is probably the biggest negative coming out of this game, is Indiana turned it over 18 times against a Hope College team that isn't overly athletic. A lot of unforced turnovers for Indiana. And so I think, for games like this, I always like to see what is the coach kind of thinking about, what does he want the team to work on, and is the team really keyed in? And I thought, Newkirk and Johnson, I thought both, if a message was being sent to them, and I don't know that it was, that's just me reading between the lines, I thought they responded really well. I thought, the rebounding and the turnovers weren't great, but that's clearly something Indiana is going to have to continue to work on. Andy, just your thoughts, in terms of kind of viewing this game in context with Crean's recent comments and then what you saw out there on the court.
Yeah, I thought the guard stuff was definitely interesting, and I forget whether it was Max or Andy Witry on the or maybe it's Witry. I guess I should know. I gave him some good praise on Twitter. I thought they did a great job calling the game. Probably a better job than I just did of pronouncing his name. But I thought one of them pointed out early just how much JaJuan Morgan was always talking, and I think one of the other comments from Crean was just about leadership in general, and not necessarily from the guard spot. Just, I think it was something to the effect of, once one of these guys is ready to be the leader, I'm happy to let him do it. And so, I think there's a little bit of that with Morgan out there. I thought that lineup, and I would guess the analysis tonight will show it, did not perform particularly well, just because of some of the other, I think challenges of playing those guys together. But I don't know whether it was a message or not. I guess it's kind of hard not to interpret it that way. To a certain extent, we'll see how that changes in the next game. But I did think Johnson and Newkirk and really all the guards responded pretty well to it. Johnson in particular had some kind of careless turnovers in the first half. Don't think he had any in the second half. Newkirk had, I think ended up with 7 or 8 assists and played really well. Controlling the ball there. I thought a lot of the turnovers were exactly what you'd see in an exhibition game. Guys just too keyed up to try to throw a long outlet pass and just kind of lobbing the ball in the middle of the court and. Just the kind of sloppiness that I think you would expect to see. I know for those of us, who have followed this team in these last few years, the turnovers is a wound that is easily opened when you watch some of these kinds of careless plays. So I kind of, with that, don't read as much into it. Certainly, they've got to get that cleaned up against the Kansas team that's really athletic and going to press them a lot in the backcourt in that first game. From a rebounding standpoint, I thought they cleaned that up in the second half as well. I think gave up 11 offensive rebounds in the first half. I think overall didn't check offensive rebounds for the second half, but overall in the second half, IU out-rebounded Hope 23-11. So, you saw some improvement there, but there were definitely some cases where Hope shooting a lot of threes, but IU just positionally on defense was not doing a good job of just getting their body into people. But even from half to half, saw some good improvement there. So, yeah, overall, it looked like an exhibition game. I think Ryan tweeted that out at one point, and it looked exactly like what it was. And I think it gives us some things to look at, some questions that may not be answered yet, but a case to not really overreact on November 1st.
And, interestingly, just looking at the stats, and I know plus minus is kind of a flawed metric, but still, Robert Johnson and Josh Newkirk had by far the best plus minus on the team tonight. And, again, Crean even said it's not about guys defiantly not, talking or communicating. It's just their nature. Robert's a quiet guy. James is a quiet guy. And it does, kind of feel like, maybe Tom is trying to use this part of the early season to bring something out of them that they, may be a little bit reluctant to do on their own. And we saw him call out his leadership last offseason, and leadership ended up being a strength of the team heading into the season. And so he may be trying something like that as well. Andy, did you want to make one more point?
Yeah, I think the big thing that in looking at some of those plus minus numbers, perhaps they bear this out. I just thought IU's defensive intensity when Johnson was in there was at a different level than some of the other times. Just I think the pressure he can put on the ball, I think that's partly why that that lineup that opened both halves kind of struggled because there really wasn't that person that could really get into somebody up and down the court and keep them from initiating the offense. I think that was, while Morgan gives you some size and things like that, I think they just weren't putting him in that position. So I thought Johnson defensively did really well. Shot selection wasn't great early on, but I think he got better as we went, and I think that probably plays a big role in seeing what appears to be a pretty gaudy plus-minus number.
And to your point, Max Bielfeldt, who was definitely better than advertised on the broadcast, said, last year when Robert got hurt, he felt they really missed his defensive intensity, that bulldog intensity, and that's kind of to your point there, Andy. Ryan. Yeah,
I was going to say I don't think we needed Max to tell us that. I think that was pretty obvious. I mean, you got to think about it. In that North Carolina game, the guy who killed us was Marcus Page, and that's who Robert was going to be guarding. And so you think about that, and it's like, man, what a missed opportunity. But the injuries happen, and that's the way things turn out. I thought the guards played well. I thought that Newkirk, you can tell there's a lot to work with there. He's athletic. He's quick. He certainly is willing to turn up the defensive intensity, certainly is good at looking for other people. The problem is going to come with his shooting ability. Can he shoot the ball? And tonight there were several open opportunities he passed up, and he sort of has that – it seems like he has that pass-first mentality. I think that in this offense you have to kick that because if there's one player that the defense can sag off of, especially when you're playing a good team in the Big Ten, maybe Kansas, whatever, if they can sag off of somebody and maybe help on somebody else and dare you to shoot it, that's a bad thing. We saw that 2 years ago with Indiana, and well, I guess now 3 years at this point. But that's a really bad situation for this offense because the whole point is to spread the floor on those shooters, open up driving lanes, open up the interior for Thomas Bryant. And if they can sag off of somebody, that's going to be a problem. So I just like to see his confidence with his shot develop, and I'd like to see him make some because I think he can. I think we've seen that from him in scrimmages and what we've seen. He doesn't have a bad jump shot. I just think it's a confidence thing. And while he had 7 assists tonight and 4 rebounds, only 1 turnover, his only points came at the free throw line. So I'd really like to see him sort of have the confidence in his game to be able to spread the floor and distribute, not just do one or the other.
Yeah, he did a great job of finding open guys, but like you said, reluctant to shoot. And he shot 40+% as a freshman at Pittsburgh. That dipped as a sophomore. We did see some good shooting from him at Hoosier Hysteria in the scrimmage, so hopefully he can get that going because that's a great point about the offense. Let's talk about a guy who clearly is going to be an engine for this team this year, which is OG Anunoby. My first thought is, can we get OG some pants that he's comfortable with the length? I mean, his pants are already short enough, but then he's spending half his time like hiking his pants up to make them even shorter. Get the man some pants that he's comfortable with, number one. Number two, OG was 4 of 7 from downtown. And, really his last couple shots, more great analysis from Max, he really kind of faded out of his shot. When he was really into it and focused on his shot, I mean, it was money. And he looked really good shooting. He finished with 16 points, and I liked his aggressiveness driving to the bucket. The problem is he had 5 turnovers tonight. And, this is going to be the key for OG is he's a guy whose usage rate wasn't very high last year, had a turnover rate of 19.7%, and now his usage rate is going to go up. The attention the defense is giving him is going to go up. And obviously he's going to have to be able to drive into the lane so that, people can't overplay him shooting threes. And he's going to have to do it now and not turn it over. And I think we've seen his aggressiveness doing that in these first weeks, few times we've seen Indiana play. And now he's got to be able to do that and not turn the ball over. So love the three-point shooting, love the aggressiveness on offense. Now it's about doing it with efficiency. Ryan, your thoughts on OG?
Yeah, I actually thought that all 3 of his three-pointers that he missed, he rushed. And again, early season exhibition game, that's going to happen. It wasn't too concerning for me. And you're right, Max Bielfeldt called it perfectly. And I thought Max did a great job. You could tell how much the shooting had been drilled into him by Indiana coaches and how much he had clearly worked on it with them because he could call every single time somebody pulled off a shot, somebody, didn't follow through, somebody leaned back, whatever. He was right there with it on the broadcast. I thought that was a great job by Max Bielfeldt. But yeah, Anunoby is who he is, and he's basically a advanced version of who he was last year. And I think that's what we expected. I think the shooting, the efficiency is off the charts. with his shooting. I think that's going to be that way all year. That's just the guy he is. He doesn't make bad decisions and he doesn't take bad shots. He and JaJuan Morgan, that was what made them special last year, was they didn't make mistakes that freshmen typically make. And so I think you're looking at a situation where he's going to be efficient all year. But you're right. The turnovers, if he's going to be a guy driving to the basket, he can't be the new Troy Williams. He's got to stay, within himself and keep the ball on his hip, or keep the ball out in front of him, not let it get on his hip and let it, get knocked away or lose it. So I think that we're seeing a maturation for him, offensively. He's becoming a more mature offensive player. He's just got to not try and overdo it and not try and underdo it. I mean, I think he's going to have a tendency to shy away from driving because that's not what he did last year. So he's got to find that right balance of when to attack, when to hold, when to shoot, when to pass. And it's coming. I think it's coming. He looks like a much more confident player this year, and it's something an Indiana fan should be excited about because he's going to be real good.
Yes, he is. Let's talk about James Blackmon Jr. real quick. My first thought when the ball first tipped and saw him playing was how great it was to see him back out there in an IU uniform again. I know that there was some questions about what Indiana may have lost or gained without him in the lineup last year, but there's no question you're not as good of a team when James Blackmon Jr. isn't there because he's such a dynamic offensive force. He's a guy who was just born to score buckets in basketball games, and he did it again tonight. 15 points. He was 5 of 6 from the field, ultra efficient. A couple of rebounds and assists. So he wasn't exactly stuffing the stat sheet, but that What we're going to need from James this year is scoring. He's a guy who's going to have to score points when it gets late in the shot clock. He's the guy that we're going to be going to, and I think that's going to be such an important role for him. And again, we've seen him put up lots of points in lots of different situations, but it's good to see him back out there doing it again. Looked athletic, looks ready to go. I thought all positive signs there from James. Andy, any thoughts on the return of James Blackmon to live action tonight?
I think he made that dunk in the first half, but he also had another one or two plays where he got easy layups just because he was out running on the floor, and I think that was a good thing to see as you start, making sure that the speed is back and those kinds of things. Obviously defense is a big one. I thought overall the team seemed to not have a great consistent approach on how they wanted to approach some of these ball screens. It seemed like they were switching a lot of things early and going under some screens later. So I think he struggled a little bit in that area, but I don't think he was alone in terms of trying to go at it that way. But I thought his shot looked good. Seemed to really pick his spots and made some big baskets. But to your point, while he has proven to be a capable rebounder, I think when you look at most of the lineups that IU is going to have this year, that will not necessarily be something that they need as much from him perhaps as they did in the past, and certainly he can chip in there, but again, you saw that ability for him to kind of really get out and transition, get a couple baskets. I think you're going to see him be able to get threes by doing the same thing, and so I think that's a positive. The defense is really what people are going to want to watch for, and I'm not sure that the level of competition tonight is the best way to gauge that. So those are really the things I looked at from him. It certainly seemed healthy, and that to me was the biggest thing that I was looking for.
Hey, Ryan, real quick, you mentioned Troy Williams. Troy got the start tonight for Memphis and just got a tweet. Apparently they're losing, but he's the leading scorer right now for the Grizzlies. If he keeps up this pace from undrafted to starting, he's going to be all NBA by midseason.
The man has no conscience. I do not doubt that he's the leading scorer. I just wonder about the efficiency of it. But
he's been efficient so far in his NBA play.
Good for Troy. We are all rooting for him very hard. We're, rough on him when he was a player, but that doesn't mean we don't love him. Yes. As for Blackmon, I think that it's just you're seeing him, and we saw it at the beginning of last year at times. He's a much more mature player than when we saw him for a full season the last time. And I think that his game has matured, and he has just matured. So he was really efficient tonight. I think it was 5 of 6 from the field, 2 of 3 from 3-point range, 3 of 4 from the free throw line. And if they can get him to play any defense whatsoever, and I'm not saying that he won't this year. We haven't really seen enough of him to know this year whether or not he has improved defensively, and I don't think tonight was the night to test that out. But if he can do that and just be himself, he's going to be a huge part of the piece of this puzzle for Indiana. And it definitely will pick up some of the slack from losing a guy like Yogi Ferrell. So, and Nick Zeisloft, of course, with the shooting. So, again, I thought it was just great to see him out there and healthy. And he looked, completely healthy and fit and ready to go.
And I think he's on a roster now that really complements his strengths and can help minimize his weaknesses. And I'm not sure that was the case his freshman and sophomore years. And fit is really important. And I think he's got a chance to have a really big season because of that. All righty. So I want to tell you real quick, take a minute, tell you why you should activate your free Assembly Call membership. And you can do this by going to assemblycall.com/join. Every game, so this will be our first one, will come out tomorrow morning. We send a post-game analysis email. It includes my analysis. We've got Andy's analysis of the substitution patterns in there. Will provides his stat of the night. We haven't figured out a way yet to fit Ryan into that email, so we'll have to see if we can do that. Maybe he can give you tips on riding bikes, something like that he knows a lot about. But you want to get on that. It's assemblycall.com/join. You can participate in our chat. You can get all the emails that we send out. It's a great way to kind of take your connection with the Assembly Call to the next step, all free, and we would love to have you on there. So go to assemblycall.com/join and activate your free Assembly Call membership today. All righty, well, you are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. We are breaking down Indiana's 98-65 exhibition victory over Hope College. I'm Jared Morris here with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips. All right, let's not bury the lead. Let's have some fun now and talk about the freshmen, because I think, when it comes to Hoosier hysteria, scrimmages, the exhibition games, to me, it's always the most fun to see the freshmen, kind of see them get out there and play, see what you have. And Indiana has, 3 freshmen, I think, that showed tonight, at least their early returns, are that they belong. And let's start with Devontae Green. And in fact, I just saw Will tweet out, Devontae in the postgame press conference said, "I feel like I belong." And my goodness, does he show it. I mean, this is a guy that's got aggressiveness, moxie, and the skill to back it up. Sometimes freshmen come in and think it's going to be just like high school, and you see him kind of making these wild-ass plays. But he was, just really efficient. As Ryan mentioned earlier, led the team with 17 points, 7 of 9 from the field, had 3 boards, 2 assists, 2 steals. And I got to say, I know this feels almost sacrilegious. There's a couple times I felt like I was watching Yogi out there when he did his little kind of shake and bake move into the lane, and just the confidence. Now, look, he's got a long way to go to live up to that legacy. But seeing the number 11, and look, Yogi was like that as a freshman too, just confident, looked like he belonged from the moment he stepped on the floor. And this is a guy who is an unheralded recruit, but brother Danny Green in the NBA, a guy who clearly believes in himself, had some big moments in high school. We're going to have to see it against better competition. But all we've seen, Hoosier hysteria, the scrimmage, the practice, tonight, this guy belongs, and he's going to be an important rotation player. Ryan, your early thoughts on Devontae Green?
Well, I'll say this: he's far better than his high school tape. The highlights for him, which is shocking because his brother's in the NBA, but the highlights and the tape for him in high school was really limited. What was available, and I didn't see. I saw a confident guy. I did not see somebody who was this good, and he is very good. I saw he had one thing that I noticed on tape when we did our recruiting special was great vision, confidence. But I thought his jump shot needed work. I thought he needed to get a little quicker and a little better ball handling. I was wrong there. His jump shot is fine. His ball handling is much better than it showed up on tape. And the thing that I loved about him and that I love about his attitude is he is a more than willing defender. And I think that is huge for this team and huge for any freshman, because these kids on the AAU circuit do not play any defense 99% of the time. And he's a guy who was talking about how he wants to come in to be the best defender in college basketball. That is not usually what you hear from a freshman. And so just his attitude out there, he wants to get into guys on defense. He wants to drive down the lane and make a spectacular play. He had that lob to Thomas Bryant in the, middle of the lane, just lays it off, and Thomas laid it in. That was beautiful. And then his confidence as a shooter is through the roof. So he does belong. He's a guy who is much better than he looked in high school. He's a guy who's going to fit in. And right now with him, we're going to talk about these guys, but Geron Davis, Curtis Jones, that's a great freshman class that is much better than it was ranked. And we thought that at the time when they all signed that these guys were better than their ranking as a class. But we're seeing that definitely show up.
It's becoming a theme with Tom Crean recruiting, that the underrated classes overperform and the really highly rated classes underperform what they're supposed to do. Andy, I want to get your thoughts on Curtis Jones. I know you have some stats on how the freshman performed overall. Let me just make kind of a random observation about Curtis Jones. I really enjoy watching him run. Like there's something about the way that he picks up his feet. He has a really engaging gait, just the way he moves up and down the court.
I will say this, he is such an athletic, just ball of clay, but he's a skilled basketball player, but you can tell that like he hasn't even grown into his athleticism yet. Like he's still figuring it out because there was a time he drove down the lane and jumped, and it was almost like he didn't expect to jump as high as he did, and like went up for it. It's just, he is unbelievable, and he's going to be a lot of fun to watch, as you said.
Yeah, he is. Andy, your thoughts on Cujo in the freshman overall?
Yeah, I thought Curtis Jones was one of the guys who really turned the game around in the first half when he came in on the floor. Immediately he made, he hit a three, blocked a shot. They showed that one replay where, the Hope's trying to do a dribble handoff and he just jumps in and almost took the handoff from the guy, just couldn't quite hang on to it. Just really intense and didn't seem to, while they were all pretty amped up, didn't, obviously the moment, as you say, against Hope College maybe isn't that big, but certainly didn't seem to be afraid on the big stage and jumped right in and was really aggressive. I think you saw that, with Green as well. He picked up those couple kind of cheap fouls at the beginning, but it was, really aggressive, trying to get it in there, get in somebody's face and do a good job defensively, as Ryan mentioned. So I was really impressed with them. They both showed the ability to score from both getting to the rim, but also knocking down threes. And, overall, we'll talk about Geron Davis here in a second, but just overall, the three of those guys played 47 minutes. They had 30 points, 12 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 blocks, made 11 of 16 from the floor, including 4 or 5 from 3, and had just 3 turnovers in those 47 minutes. So in a game when, we lamented some of these turnovers and how that all looked, the 3 guys who had never put on an IU uniform in a game of any kind other than a scrimmage certainly did their part to keep that number down. And I thought all played really well and just all seemed to be around the ball a lot. I know I remarked that about Geron Davis. He seemed to come in and wherever the ball was, he always seemed to be there. I think you could really say the same thing for all of them. They were right in the mix, not afraid to, try to make a play. And, certainly as Devontae Green said, he's feeling like he belongs. I think we would all say his play would suggest that is the case.
That's what I love about these freshmen. They're not bashful. I just love how they just stepped on the court and started making plays. And I'll tell you, we talked a lot early last season, well before OG and JaJuan were getting consistent minutes, about how much when they came on the court, how Indiana fundamentally just played better because they would get in stances. They seemed to really be in tune with kind of what Coach Crean wanted at a time early in the season when, if we remember, things weren't going quite so well. And so it's interesting that for the second straight season, again, just an exhibition, so we'll have to see if it carries on into the real games. But again, you've got freshmen who seem really keyed into what the coach wants them to work on with, not turning the ball over and doing some of the fundamental things. And that's really good to see, young players playing that fundamentally sound early on. Ryan, your thoughts on Geron Davis, who was the headliner of Indiana's recruiting class?
Yeah, I love Geron Davis. I've not been shy about pumping that kid up since he signed. I think that he's far better than his ranking. I couldn't believe he wasn't a McDonald's All-American, and I thought it was a joke that he wasn't a 5-star. I think he's an all-around just a great basketball player who's only going to get exponentially better playing against Thomas Bryant every day. I thought tonight, you got to remember with Geron is he didn't get on campus until late, and so you didn't expect him to play a whole lot. You expect him to kind of be worked in slowly, and that sort of showed up tonight. He only played 9 minutes, but in that 9 minutes, he had 7 rebounds, 6 on the offensive end. 6 shots or 6 points, and he kind of worked his way into those shots too. It wasn't just catch and lay it up. He had a couple where he attacked the rim off a rebound, and I just thought he looked like he belonged. And the thing about these freshmen, and we haven't seen enough of Grant Gallon yet, but you said they're not bashful, and it's true. They're not timid. They are in there to play basketball. They're not in there to learn. They're there to play basketball when they get on the floor. And they'll listen. They'll fix what they're doing wrong and all that. But they're in there to play and make stuff happen. They're not just in there to eat up minutes. And so that's what I love about these kids. It's the confidence factor. They're in there to do some damage. And I think that that's fantastic because that's what Indiana needs with what it lost. It needed guys who were going to come in and push the guys ahead of them, make those guys better. Because when you have guys breathing down your neck that you're going up against in practice every day, you either have to get better or you have to yield and let them take over. So that's going to push those top guys to get better. And I think that Davis is a guy who's going to push Thomas Bryant, and Thomas in turn is going to push, Geron Davis. And as I said repeatedly, love Davis. Think he's going to be a great player for Indiana.
Yeah, and as far as Geron, we talked about some getting in late, some of the conditioning things. I think he had a ankle injury, but early in the first half when he got in, not long after that, as much as we wanted IU to get the ball inside, they got it into him, and he made a quick move, a nice drop step to the basket, and got a bucket. So, I think you can just see the little flashes, and that was just where he was, blocked a shot pretty quick after he came in, and so I think you start to see it. We saw even a little bit of he and Thomas Bryant playing together, or thump and bump, as Max Bielfeldt put it. So I'll be interested to see how much we see of that. But with the way that Bryant was playing a little bit more on the perimeter, I think it at least presents them with some flexibility from a lineup standpoint in different scenarios. And certainly from a rebounding perspective, 6 offensive rebounds in 9 minutes. A couple minutes ago when I was doing the stats, I misquoted the minutes. They played 36 minutes total. The 47 I referenced was the total plus minus for those 3 guys. So good numbers all around, but they ended up playing 36 minutes between the 3 of them, or a total of plus 47 overall. So definitely a good first outing for those guys. And I think particularly with Davis, who's really just getting into shape, getting, Lionel Anderson, getting his hands on him. I think the amount of improvement we'll see from this game to the end of the season for him is going to be a lot greater than other people, just because he didn't have that same opportunity over the summer to make some of those strides physically, as well as what he's going to be able to do on the basketball court.
Yeah, I think one thing that if you go back and watch the game that was really funny is when Davis and Bryant were in at the same time. They isolated Bryant out on the perimeter, isolated Davis into the post, and immediately got the. You can tell they worked on this in practice. They got the ball to Bryant immediately on the same side of the floor as Davis, and he immediately went in the post. There was a foul called, but you could see as soon as Bryant threw that pass, Tom Crean was clapping so hard because clearly that's something they want to do. Isolate those guys, make them choose to either guard Bryant's jump shot or Geron Davis on the inside one-on-one. So a well-designed play, and clearly something that he's looking for more of there.
Let's talk a little bit about JaJuan Morgan. Again, the kind of the lead coming out of this game is JaJuan Morgan starts at point guard, and everybody's going to have their hot take on that. But I think that probably overshadows what was a really productive game for JaJuan Morgan. And you probably, with unfortunately the Colin Hartman things hashtag, we can't use that for right now, but I think JaJuan Morgan things is going to become its own hashtag. And I thought, again, Max had some really good insight, again, viewing this game within the context of what Tom Crean has said recently that he wants out of his players. And Max said, JaJuan is out there every possession, talking, communicating, telling guys where to be, showing that leadership. And I think it's, impossible not to draw a direct line to the fact that that's why he started. And the reason he's at point guard is just because that's kind of where he fit best with that group of guys. But again, a productive game. He only had 7 points, but that was on only 2 field goal attempts. So he got to the line 8 times. He had 12 rebounds, had a couple of assists, had a block, had a steal, and generally is just active and doing good things out there. And I think we talked all off season about how important he can be as a Swiss Army knife for this team, a guy who can guard 4 or 5 positions, a guy who can handle the ball as well as go down and bang down low. He's really going to give Tom Crean a lot of flexibility because you can trust him. He's going to go out and play hard. He's going to do the little things, and he can step out and shoot a little bit, and he can make some plays. And I think we've heard so much about his potential breakout this year from everybody who's really close to the program and who has watched this team play. And I think these are the kind of games you're going to see. He's not a guy who needs to take a lot of shots to score some points, and he's going to rebound and just do all of those little things that add up to victories. Andy, your thoughts on JaJuan's overall performance tonight?
Yeah, again, when you look at a couple of things that we talked about as being weak spots for IU were turnovers and rebounding, and here's a guy who played and had the ball in his hands quite a bit, played 22 minutes, had 1 turnover, and he led the team with 12 rebounds. So, 9 of those on the defensive end. So I think he did the things well that IU struggled with, and so you're just going to see, more and more of him. But he's also a guy who doesn't need to take a bunch of shots to get there. But I thought he was really aggressive off the dribble. He drew a lot of fouls, even to get IU into the bonus. Not necessarily, he ended up with 8 free throw attempts, as you mentioned, but I thought he drew a ton of fouls on them just being aggressive going to the basket. So I think you see, again, I'm trying to think of a comparable player from other, Big Ten programs in recent years who's kind of been this way, where didn't need to score a lot, but did a lot of little things. Like Allen Anderson of Michigan State a while back kind of came to mind. Trying to think of other guys who kind of fit that mold of do a little bit of everything, just a tough guy to guard, a tough guy to handle for the defense. And so
Geron Davis was a little bit like that for Purdue, though a little bit inconsistent.
Don't ever compare JaJuan Morgan to a Purdue player.
Am I banned from next week's show?
You got a yellow card. Maybe bench to start.
You got a yellow
warning.
You got a yellow card. One more and you're out. I want to say about JaJuan, I think one thing that's going to be really important for him this year, and I sort of thought this in the offseason because of the way he plays, and he is always around the ball, and he's always trying to make something happen. He's always in the right spot. He's going to have to make his free throws this year, and I think that's going to be a huge part of his game. I don't see him as a guy who's going to drive off the wing and score a whole lot. I think that he's going to be a guy who, like OG last year, is a weak side, comes in weak side, gets a great pass, lays it in, shoots some threes, and maybe hit some stationary jumpers, and maybe work some post moves. But I don't think he's a guy who's going to take it off the wing, 2 or 3 dribbles and go right up to the rim very often. What he's going to be able to do, though, is with the ball in his hands, since he is efficient and not turning the ball over, he's going to have to make his free throws, because I think that a lot of times he's going to get put on the line late. And so I'd like to see him, with a smoother shot at the line. He tends to lean back, as Max pointed out tonight, I believe. He does lean back a little bit on his free throws. And so he's got to, fix that, sort of, shore that up, because he's going to be on the floor in key moments, and he's going to have to make those shots.
He did shoot 80% last year. It was 24 for 30, and he's got a good-looking stroke at the line. When he stays with the shot.
Agree, and I don't think it's a problem structurally with a shot or anything like that. He missed a few tonight. I'm not really hanging it on that. I just think that he's going to be a guy in key situations who's going to have to make shots, so free throws. So that's got to be a real big focus for him.
Yep. All right, hey, before we go to last call real quick, which we'll go to next, one more quick reminder that a great way to support the Assembly Call and to get yourself some really cool gear is by ordering your official Assembly Call t-shirt from HoosierProud.com. So excited they're sponsoring our banner moment this year. But go to HoosierProud.com, and it's not just the Assembly Call t-shirts, but there's lots of really cool just shirts and stickers and sweatshirts that if you're from Indiana, if you're a Hoosier, you're going to love. Some really cool, unique designs that Connor and the guys have over there. I think you'll like it. So go to HoosierProud.com, and don't forget, use that promo code Assembly, ASSEMBLY, and you'll get 15% off your entire order, not just the Assembly Call shirt, but your entire order. So a really generous offer that they have for Assembly Call listeners. Again, go to HoosierProud.com. All righty, well, you are listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Jared Morris here with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips, wrapping up our show tonight as Indiana defeats Hope College 98-65. And let's get some final thoughts here. Ryan, we'll go to you first. Last call.
I think that one of the things for this team, and I think we saw it at the beginning of this game, they were a little ragged. Obviously, the competition allows you to do that without them. The lower level competition allows you to do that without the opponent running away from it. I was kind of in a back and forth on Twitter with somebody about, when are we going to know what this team's going to be? And I kind of, because of how much this team lost, from a leadership perspective, from a key position perspective, like point guard and, a guy you could always rely on to hit shots, and Nick Zeisloft, and a guy who could, always rely on to mix it up like Troy Williams. I think that somebody asked me, like, okay, well, when are we going to have to start looking at results and wonder what this team's going to be? And I kind of said, I think the Butler game is when at that point, that's when we have to start worrying about results. I think that Kansas first game, that's just going to depend on which team flies out to Hawaii and, takes care of itself the most. The North Carolina game, that's a really good team. You'd love to win that game, but if you don't, it's really not the end of the world. But when you get that Butler, that Louisville game, that's when you have to start worrying about where this team is at. Has it rounded into form yet? Do they look like a team that can play this year and compete for a Big Ten title? I think by that point we'll know. It's not that I don't want to win those earlier games, those early big games. I just think that it might be the fact that, and Tom Crean said this, I think we might need to be a little bit patient with this team as they find their identity and their way. And I think that it's great that these freshmen tonight, we saw them step up, play well. Maybe they can help, speed that process up. So for now, enjoy the exhibition games for what they are. But that's a key thing to watch, is how these guys play together, how they interact together, how the communication is, and all that stuff. And hopefully by December, we're starting to see that as a fully well-rounded team, sort of rounding into form heading into the Big Ten season.
That's kind of what happened last year. Andy, last call.
So one thing that I'll be curious to watch in the next exhibition game will be how this team starts halves. I know this is something we talked about a decent amount last year, and when you look between TV timeouts, or I guess media timeouts, internet streaming timeouts, whatever we want to call them, in the BTN Plus era, the only two segments between those that IU was outscored was between the beginning of the game and the under 16 in the first half, and the beginning of the half and the under 16 in the second half. So they got scored by 5 points in the first one and 4 in the second, gave up 12 points in the first one and 13 in the second. And so, those were areas, we can point to some of the lineup things with that. And I think the plus minus numbers may well bear that out. But just the intensity needed to start that, like Ryan said, you can get away with some of those lapses in a game like this and probably be able to get away with it in a game like the one we'll see on Saturday, but you're not going to be able to do that against Kansas. And certainly it's easier to get yourself amped up for the beginning of a game like that. But, just while it's hard to take a lot out of some of these things, that was one thing that stuck out to me in addition to the things that we talked about earlier in terms of turnovers and rebounding. So, I guess if you're looking for something to watch for in particular in the next game, that is the thing that I would hone in on just by kind of looking at this team and how it built momentum over the course of the half. Because in the second half, they got outscored by 4 points that next one, and then they bounced back between the next two timeouts. They scored 20 points. So, in roughly a 5-minute stretch. So you can see how quickly they can heat up. The question is, can you do that without starting so cold?
Yeah, great points, Andy. I will begin my last call with a stat, seeing a bunch of people tweet this out. When Robert Johnson was on the floor tonight, IU outscored Hope College 60-16, a plus 44, which was the top on the team, as we mentioned earlier. And look, again, we don't know if Robert not starting was sending any kind of message. Not sure if that's what Crean's been referring to in his comments. But as we kind of put two and two together and maybe guess that is the case, if it was, an outstanding job by Robert Johnson of responding and coming out and playing with terrific energy and doing Robert Johnson things, the kind of stuff that makes Andy the president of his fan club. And really, that had us talking a lot early in the offseason about he was the most important player coming into this year. Thomas Bryant, the best OG, maybe the most talented, and James the best scorer, but just how important Robert was to set the tone on defense, to be the guy that helped get this team into its offense, especially, cutting down on turnovers if he can do that. So a good performance tonight from Robert Johnson, and we'll see if that results in him taking the spot that we always assumed was his in the starting lineup against Bellarmine, or if this experiment with JaJuan Morgan at point guard, perhaps that explains a little bit why Indiana started out poorly in the first couple halves, as you didn't have maybe your best lineup out there on the floor, but we will see. But for my last statement, I have a special announcement for everybody, and we did send out an email about this today and announced it on the site. But we're really, really excited. There's going to be more assembly call content. Our friend Kent Sterling from 1430, the CBS affiliate in Indianapolis, I do a weekly segment with him, and he became the program director and brought us a great opportunity to host a weekly show, which we accepted with excitement, and we can't wait to start. So it'll actually begin this Friday. We will be going live at 6 o'clock Eastern time. I believe this Friday will go a little bit later. No, we'll be at 6, but we'll end a little bit early because of the Roncalli football game. So as long as Roncalli is playing, our show will go for about a half hour. But once that is done, then we'll be going for a full hour from 6 to 7 o'clock. It'll be replayed on Saturday. And for those of you who are members and who are subscribers to the podcast, we will post this content in our podcast feed as well. But if you want to listen to it when it goes live, you can certainly tune in on 1430. If you're driving around in Indianapolis, tune in at the 1430 website. And we'll also post it as a podcast. But obviously an opportunity that we're really excited about. We thank Kent Sterling for that opportunity. And really, we thank you too. It's because you all are so loyal and supportive of us, and we have such a great audience that we can continue to do this show, hopefully get better at it, give you a better product. and so that people want to have us on their shows and want to bring us into their station and bring our content to their audience too. So we wouldn't be able to do it without you. So thank you. We're really excited. We kind of feel like this is a big achievement for the entire Assembly Call community. And so we are excited to share it with you. All righty. Well, we will be back on Saturday. Indiana plays Bellarmine. That game starts at 7 o'clock Eastern time, 6 o'clock Central. It will be on BTN Plus. I don't know if it'll be Andy Witchery and Max Bielfeldt on the call. I sure hope so, because they were great tonight. But either way, we will be here with you on the postgame show. Join us at assemblycall.com/live for the postgame show. We'll be here to break it all down. Hopefully it's another fun, exuberant Indiana victory over Bellarmine. We will talk to you on Saturday night.